Hi fellow reefers, I'm Eddie of Eddie's Reef Aquaria. Today's video, there's a little change because today in this week's video I was going to start to talk about the recent acquisitions that I got, the two corals. But guess what? Because of Memorial Day there was a bunch of specials on my local LFS. So I went ahead and I went to one of the local LFSs that I have around here and I bought another 3 new acquisitions. So today the topic is going to be, like I said on the previous week, I'm just going to showcase these 3 corals. And I did have to reallocate also the Monti Red Cap and also the Season's Greetings. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show you the tank, what's going on. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you find it interesting and educational. And let's take a deep dive into it. Hold on. Okay, so here we are in front of the new acquisitions, shall we call it. These are the 3 corals that I got this past weekend. As a matter of fact, Sunday. Okay, we're going to go from the left to the right. Excuse me. Okay, the left one is Worldwide Coral Acro. And this acro, the price of it was around $100 and it was dropped to $30. So you better believe it, I purchased it, and I'm going to go ahead and risk it because as people that follow me for a long time, you know that I'm having issues trying to keep acros. My stability is already in check. As a matter of fact, on the previous video that I talked about, you probably noticed that not only am I talking about these species of coral, but I'm also educating all of you out there on little different topics and things that you should know. So, but what I mean, the tank is stable and all that is when it comes to the general modern school of thought, before that, sterile tank. Now by that I mean your pH was 8.0, no nitrates, you know, the NO3 was 0, PO4 phosphates, I don't think that a lot of people even checked it. But if so, it was supposed to be on 0. In other words, what they call it, a sterile tank. Well, nowadays, with new research and a lot of marine biologists graduating and coming out and talking about all these topics, this has changed. It's been proven that when it comes to, I mean in general, all the corals, but specifically targeted, the acros, the SPS, the sticks, as somebody call them, you have to have not as much a clean tank, a clean water volume, shall we call it. So by that, you should have a trace amount of NO3s, which is nitrates, and PO4, which is phosphates. Now, and then pH, if you can keep it as high as you can, like 8.0, A1, A2, A3 would be ideal, but it's very difficult to keep that parameters, not unless if you use different methods, but that's a topic for another day. So what happens is that you have to have, in other words, in layman terms, you have to have a little bit of dirty water. You cannot have pristine water. If you have a NO3 of 0 and a PO4 of 0, you might, and I say you might have difficulties when it comes in general to all corals, but specifically SPS, and even more specifically your acros, your sticks. So what I've learned with the new school of thought, and I'm going to throw this out to all of you, is that NO3s, in other words nitrates, should be, I'd say, around 10 parts per million is great. And then the PO4, the phosphates, in a mixed reef, you should have it, I'd say 8, 10. You can go even a little higher. So in other words, have not a sterile, clean tank. And I've been able to accomplish that. Last week when I went ahead and I checked my parameters, my PO4 was at 21. And my NO3 was at about 10. The PO4 was a little high. So what did I do? I went ahead and I did a water change. Not as much as before, but a little water change so I can bring a little bit down the PO4s. Now, I haven't been running my protein skimmer. These protein skimmers, the Ghost skimmers for Innovative Marine, they're very efficient. So I haven't been running the skimmer, I would say, for the last month. And the tank is doing great, because if I start to run the protein skimmer, trust me, it'll clean the water. Although it will give more oxygen to the water, and my pH should technically, theoretically, go up a little minuscule amount of value. But when you run the protein skimmers, and this being very efficient, it will actually bring the parameters down. I'm talking about the NO3 and PO4s. It'll bring it down drastically to practically zero. And right now, as we speak, I'm feeding 3 times a day. In the morning, I feed dry pellets. And then in the afternoon, I go ahead and I feed frozen mysis. And then in the evening, I feed Reef Mix, which is by Worldwide Coral. It's like a fish and octopus and krill and all that, and scallops all put together. So I could do this in the sense that I could even I could turn on the protein skimmer, and then I could feed it even more exponentially. But I really don't want to do that. And then you have products. You have a product. I don't know the name of it now, but I know there's a product to raise your nitrates. It's by Brightwell Aquatics. Well, I could do that, and then my nitrates would go up, and then I could keep my phosphates at a level like about 10, 12-ish or something for a mixed reef, and I wouldn't have to go into the situation of feeding so much. But I've decided not to try to see if I can stay away from all these chemicals and products and do it the natural way, which would be feeding. So right now, as we speak, it's doing fine. The PO4s were a little high, 21, but I went ahead and I did a water change. Now, the rule of thumb is that you should be able to go ahead and pass the normal ranges just a little bit. So then you can go ahead and do a water change. Now, but what I mean by this is, if I know, like I've said before on previous videos, as a matter of fact, I said it on the previous video, you go out there, you look at other YouTubers that have to do with reef tanks, and they either change their water bi-weekly or every week. Fantastic. But what they're not telling you, what they're not explaining to you, is because their nutrient levels are high. So they need to export that those amount of nutrients, because they're feeding heavily, big time. So that's why they have to do weekly water changes or bi-weekly. Now, in this case, in this scenario, in this 40-gallon reef, since my nutrients are low, then if I go and do a weekly water change, I mean, for me to bring the NO3s to a desirable level and to bring the PO4s to a desirable level, I will have to be feeding, every half an hour, because I'm doing too many water changes. In this case, I'm not saying that all the cases are the same. Remember on my previous videos that I've talked about that I can set up an identical tank, this identical tank right next to it. Same rocks, same sand, same salt, everything, and it's going to behave different, just like a human being. Even twins, they are going to behave differently. They have different characters, on and on and on. So when you go out there and you see, no, I'm doing weekly water changes. Another one, no, I'm doing bi-weekly. No, I change my water. I do a water change once a month, some every 3 months, 6 months, a year, and some people don't even change their water. Well, that is because they are checking. Like I'm doing a complete check weekly, usually on the weekends, and they're seeing where their nutrient level is. How can you detect the nutrient levels? Of course, the NO3 and the PO4s. That's how you know if you have too much nutrients. And knowing now the new school of thought that you cannot have a clean tank, sterile water, you have to have some trace of nitrates and phosphates for all these corals to thrive, especially the sticks and in general the SPS, and even going down in general all the corals. So I thought I'd throw that out there, give you a little tutorial, educational. So now going to the middle coral, I had this. It's a Pavona. It's a gold Pavona, and I'm finding out, but I have to, when I talk about this coral, I'll have more detail on it, but I think that these Pavonas come from the Maldives water, in other words, Indonesia, the Pacific Ocean, which they do come from, but targeting the Maldives waters. So that one didn't do too well, my fault, because I had it in a section where it had a bit of shade, so that didn't help, and it started to turn pale. I was checking it, but like overnight I noticed the paleness, and I moved it, but it didn't make it. So I'm going to try again. This one looks more healthier. This gold Pavona, the polyps were more extended. So I think I'm going to make it with this one. I think I'm going to have better luck. Then moving to the far right, I had a Spongotus before. It had, I mean, I've had it for about 2 or 3 years. At least in this tank, it was a slow grower. But it started to fade, and it might have been the effect of raising the lights a little bit, which I had to bring him down. If you follow me, you'll notice on that video that I talk about how to bring up your lights 5% increments. And when you see that if you have SPS or something, when you see that the coral, it has like a little bald spot or something, bring it down. So I was up to 60, and I had to bring it down to 55, and I brought it down to 50. So now I'm running now this again is the brightness, like I talked about the previous video. So I'm running now the 50% of total brightness, but I have kept that instead of 3 hours of the cool whites and the whites, I had ramped that up to 4 hours. So I have kept that at 4. So being the case that now it looks like the tank is really stable when it comes to the nutrient levels, that the PO4s and NO3, I should have better luck when it comes to acro. So here we are focused at the season's greetings. I had it in the substrate, which is fine, but I kind of noticed, I'm pretty sure you guys can see it there, but I'll show you with a little arrow. I'm not sure if that rim around it that you see here, let me see if I can show you. Well, that rim around it, if it's actually growth. I have a magnifying glass for the tank, for all the corals, so I can really inspect them. I think it's growth, but I'm not 100% sure. So I did a little research, and of course, people that follow me and that you follow probably other channels, I'm one of the ones that belong to the crowd that I move corals around in reference to the behavior that I see on the corals. So I've moved it up to like middle quadrant and see what happens. I'll keep an eye on it, and but I think it's actually growth, to be honest with you. But just in case, I moved it up to the middle portion of the tank. I thought I'd show you that. And then now I'm going to show you another relocation of the Monty Red Cap. Hold on. So here we are showing the Monty Red Cap. I relocated it. I brought it higher. If you follow me, you know that I had put it down to the lower quadrant of the tank, but it was a bit shady. It started to recover, but I noticed it started to get more paler. So now I've tried to put it up there and see what happens. Again, like I reiterated before, I move corals around and I look at the behaviors and see what's going on. Before I close the video, this is something that I thought I mentioned when it comes to the rule of thumb, when it comes to corals in general. If you see that something's happening to a coral, like in this case, don't just give up on it and tear it off and throw it away. Give it time. Have patience. In this hobby, the successful hobbyists, reef keepers, there's two main things that you always have to keep in mind. Number one, of course, patience. This hobby, to make it successful, for you to have a successful reef, patience. And two is try to keep your hands away from, inside the tank. Of course, if it's necessary, if something moves, or like I got these corals, I put them in, of course you're going to have to plunge your hands inside the tank. But try to keep your hands out of your reef tank as much as possible. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, found it interesting, educational, and fun. And as you notice, and I'm going to reiterate, very important what I said before. When I shoot these videos, and especially when I'm talking about like updates and all that, I'll always throw in some information, some extra information that all of you can actually benefit and use out there. And I thought I stress on this because there's a lot of channels out there, and some people a lot know more than me and others know less. And so when it comes to YouTubing, do your research, follow me and subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. But at the same token, I thought I mentioned this. When I shoot a video, prior to shooting a video, first of all, I go ahead and I pick what topic I'm going to talk about. And believe it or not, this is something behind the scenes, but I thought I'd throw it out. On Mondays, I go to the gym on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, Monday, when I'm going to pick the topic of discussion, actually I do it at the gym, at the clubhouse where I live. I go ahead and I'm on the treadmill, and what am I going to talk about today for this week? And I usually come up with the topics, believe it or not, at my gym. Then once I figure out what the topic is, I go ahead and I shoot the intro. But then I go to my laptop and I start doing research. So what I do is I couple my experiences for many, many years, and I also couple it with what's out there nowadays, because believe me, I've been doing this, I'd say 25, 30 and counting. And the theories and practices that were used way back completely changed nowadays. So that's why I use my previous experience for something that would be like the baseline. And at the same token, then I go in and I do my research, and then I use the new school of thought, the new methods, the new theories, the new practices. So that's how I come up with when I'm talking about things of this nature. Today and the previous week, it's just basically showcasing corals and all that. But when I talk about a specific coral, trust me, I go in and first of all, I talk about my previous experiences and then the new school of thought. As a matter of fact, when I started this hobby way back, 30 some odd years, and even that far, not that far back, but I would say more or less in the 20-ish years or so, SPS was barely talked about. It was very difficult to keep SPS because of the life support technology, which came from Germany, and there wasn't that much of technology to actually keep acros. And now look, and even now, even me that I have all this experience, it's very difficult. So again, I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit the thumbs up, hit that little notification bell. And like I say at the end of all of my videos, happy reefing. And until next time, bye-bye.